I want to share with you now a key element of a heart-based approach, a primary factor that makes the children in our programs change more quickly as we work with their parents. I think you'll find this to be very strategic for you. I think we can draw attention to this by looking at a common complaint that parents have, and that is that I feel like I'm threatening my kids all the time. I have to threaten them to get them to do anything, or I find that I'm doing too many consequences. And so yes, we can make some changes there. And the solution for all of this comes in our approach to parenting on a larger scale. I like to talk to parents about 2 Timothy 3:16, which says that the scriptures are profitable. So we're talking about the Bible here and how it changes people. The scriptures are profitable for teaching, for rebuke, for correction, and for training in righteousness. Now I ask parents, we know that's what the Bible does. Let's ask ourselves the question as parents, what tools do we use to bring about change in children? I mean, let's look at those 4 things: teaching, rebuke, correction, and training in righteousness. Which ones are you good at? And many parents will say, well, I think I'm pretty good at the correction and the rebuking. I'm not so good on the training and the teaching and the training in righteousness. And it's those things we want to develop and we want to help our children grasp in some very positive ways. So I want to show you what that looks like so that you can develop that. You see, if we're always giving consequences, it means that we are relying on correction as our primary tool for bringing about change in children. I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think the best tools are the training tools. So when we're training children to handle various things, we do much more, which means we need to do practice. We need to do exercises that are going to help our children to make those changes. But if we practice 20 times a day, teaching a child to learn how to follow instructions, for example, then we're building a positive way of responding, and we're not relying on consequences so much. Yes, we're going to have to correct children because they're defiant sometimes, they have bad attitudes and so on. But what we're working on here is we're trying to develop new patterns. And so training becomes this excellent way to build into kids these new patterns they need to develop. Remember, the heart is this place where we process life. It contains those patterns, and they need new training. So when they have a trigger, the trigger mom calls their name, for example, their initial response is no, maybe. And they need to have a better response. So we might say, well, I'm going to call your name 20 times today. And whenever I call your name, you need to respond to me by saying, yes, Mom, because we're trying to train that heart to think differently about interruptions. That when I call your name, your first response is yes. Why? Well, that's what Jesus taught us. He taught us that we're servants, that our first response should be yes. I know there's other things like priorities and whether this fits into my bigger picture of life and whether I should question authority. All of those are great, but those are advanced skills. Children first need to learn how to be responsive to parents when they're called. And so it may be for a period of time that you say, when I call your name, whatever you're doing, you stop that and you come right away, because I want to train you to have this inner sense of obligation to come right away when you're called. There's this beautiful thing that takes place inside of us when training starts to move us, because now we're moving toward a goal instead of away from a problem. Now, instead of focusing on the problem and trying to get rid of it, now we're saying, what quality out there could we be working on that would help this child overcome this problem that he is having? And when we start then identifying that, and then we develop training exercises to work in that direction, we're starting to build new patterns. And this is where children receive more affirmation, because now they're getting attention for doing the right thing instead of attention for doing the wrong thing. We want them to get a positive attention for doing what's right instead of negative attention for doing what's wrong. And so if we focus on training, great things can happen. It's going to require some thinking on the part of the parent. What training exercise are you going to engage in, or how are you going to practice moving forward to develop this internal quality that this child needs?